I had like using helpful employees. For example, this is the method which is both the classes having. Like sir, if it is the situation like in the one method, it is the return type or like the input parameters are different, and in the another for the another customer, the input type is different. And
then that will not fall under this category.
Okay.
That will not fall under this category. That will be altogether two different functionality, you can say. Okay. But here functionality is same, but approach is different. So in that case, we should go for this.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Anything to get clarified from dependency injection or anything? We covered TDD. As a TDD, we are not got over, guys. Today we will continue. Dependency injection I taught you because in one of the TDD approach, we set as mock testing. We need dependency injection. So without dependency injection, that particular mock test, okay, which is also unit test, it is not possible. So mock test of feature of the MVC that demands dependency injection. So now we are good with the dependency injection, right? How to inject the dependency of the class in the runtime from the middleware. That we got to know. Now we will go to mock testing. So mock testing, 75% of the things is TDD only. Last to last class, whatever we discussed. But on top of that, one small point we have to keep it in mind that we will discuss today. Okay, just give me a minute. Yeah. Some people are pinging that yesterday we have the class, why today again have the class. They will not attend the class and they will not keep in track and they will trouble. Chalo, leave it. TDD. Let me explain first what is this mock testing, then we'll go to the coding part. Okay. Audible, guys? Or I have muted myself? Is it audible? Okay. All right. So, unit testing, what we did last class is it's something like this. This is your application. Oh, sorry. Suppose this is your application, actual application. You have some coding, and in the same solution, you created a separate project. You set it as unit test code. We set it as test-driven development. And here you have some test class and test method, right? Test class and test method. So in this test method, you have three things. One is arrange, one is act, and asset, right? And this is helping in order to validate your test cases. Test case validation means only identifying the problem. Solution is still you are only doing. Sometimes what happens in this application, like you have some repository. Yesterday we created some repository also, not yesterday, maybe day before yesterday. We created some repository. I will take in some other color. So this is one repository with the interface. We'll name it as repository. Again, not necessarily it is only in MVC. A simple console application also can use TDD, right? Whichever class you want to test, create that object through arrange and then carry on. But real-time example when we are taking MVC. So repository is here, controller is here. Okay, controller is here. Now, suppose you have 10 test cases, then 10 asset will be there. So each asset, it is going and checking the workflow based on whatever you did. Acha, in our example, we created the object of controller. Why? Because we want it will start its activity from controller itself, right? Something like this. So first it will flow like this, then it will flow like this, and maybe data will be written like this. And then that data will catch in TDD and then we will validate it and whatever. That is one example we did. Now coming to this repository part, understand carefully. In repository, we have some interface also, some repository class also, right? Here we have two things. One is interface as well as we have class, repository class. I will name it as repo class. Sometimes what happens in this repository class, imagine I'm using some other class, not necessarily only one class will be there. One employee repository might be there, one department repository might be there, okay, one utility repository might be there. So many repository might be there in this class. But what happens, suppose inside this some functionality are there. Imagine in my repository class, I'm creating object of another repository class and I'm using some functionality, additional functionality. Example, save the data. When data will be saved successfully, send one email. So save the data might be another repository class, send the email might be another repository class, chance is there. Or chance is there in one repository class itself, I have two functions. Understand the background scenario. Then we will easily understand the problem part here. Then we will go for the solution part. So in this repository, imagine I have two functionality. One is save the data, another is one save the data, send the email, or fetch the data, and while fetching the data successfully, if successfully you fetch the data, then send one confirmation email. Like that, couple of functionality chance is there in one workflow, right? If you compare with our real project, what we are developing, in user registration screen, when you click the button, that time you are having 2-3 functionality. One is validate the data, one is save the data, one is send the email. So chance is there in one button click or one workflow, 2-3 operations might be there, right? Now, in those 2 to 3 operation, so what is the operation for our example? Operation number 1, maybe save the data. Operation number 2 might be send the email, for example. Okay. Now, in this example, save the data is our infrastructure, my controller, my repository, my database, our coding, everything, our own infrastructure. But send email what? Do you think it is everything our infrastructure? Chance is there ours only, chance is there some other third party also. Imagine email you are sending through Google third party, okay, Google mail service, suppose, okay, Google, GoDaddy.com, many third party services are there who helps you. If you click a button, it will go on email. Chalo, you have used some Google service, suppose. Save data is your own code. That means native code, you can say your own code and functionality. Now, if data is not saving, as a developer, you have to take complete ownership. something you might have done mistake, that's why data is not saving. But if email is not going, you cannot blame to the developer only. Chance is there developer has done some mistake while consuming that Google service. Chance is there Google service itself is down, right? So sometimes what happens, if any third party dependent functionality is there, you want to exclude it from the TDD. Now tell me, you are saying data is not saving, my assertion is failed. You have some solution with you. But if it is saying the email is not going because Google service is down, do you have any clue? Nothing. Acha, if you test it also, if it is saying success, there is nothing credit for you because you have not written the code. You are just consuming that service what Google has written. So this part is never being a developer's credit if really successful happening, not even mistake of developer if not happening successfully, because many reasons are there that third party service itself may be down. So when I'm going for this TDD operation, this complete workflow right from here to here to here to here and coming back and then saying that my workflow is success or workflow is failure. So during that complete assertion, only one assert is there and two operations are there. So what is happening, because of this third party failure, your Google service is down, your whole operation is failing because it's under same assertion, right? Same assert, it is covering two functionality internally. First save the data, then send the email. So save the data might have happened successfully, but because email got failed, so finally overall your asset is failed. Got it? Overall your asset is failed, where you don't have any role also. Your own coding which is for saving the data happening successfully, even your own coding which is for consuming the Google service happening successfully. But when it is going to that Google service, it's came to know that the service is down, or maybe your license is expired, something. So will you blame the developer's coding? No. So that kind of situation, wherever your asset is not really succeeding because of some third party dependency, then you may ignore that third party dependency in this workflow. So that ignorance is mock, M-O-C-K. Mock means ignore something or hide something. So I want to hide this guy and I want to assert this guy, this one. Okay. So I want to assert first one, I want to hide this one. Mocking means hiding. So if it could be two different function altogether, then very simple. I will not write any asset for this function. I will only write asset for this function. Very simple. But when it is single function, inside that single function repository class, only one function, inside that one function only two different code is written. First 4-5 lines maybe save the data and last 2-3 lines is consume the service of Google. Then how we have to take the approach in TDD. That is called mock testing. So mock means hide. In TDD, hide partial functionality, third party dependency functionality during TDD. So during TDD, you want to mock or hide some of third party dependent functionality, because by success of this, success of that third party functionality, developer doesn't have any credit, not even for failure of that third party functionality, developer has any solution. Your coding is perfectly fine. Yesterday only it was working. 10 minutes back it was working. Now Google service is down. How can you blame to that developer that all your mistake only? Right? The developer will say, it's not my brother's company. Google has made some problem. My code will be failed. So I want to muck that third party dependent functionality. Muck means it is not saying don't execute ever. It is saying you execute when customer will click the button. But during TDD, this test, unit testing means always developer's test. So if it is not developer mistake, why should we add that into our TDD? So how partial functionality can be ignored or mucked up during our TDD? That concept is all about the muck test. Okay, it is after all unit test, but we say it as muck test. So muck test. English word is muck, basically MOCK, but the library name which is helping us, that is MOQ. Okay, the library you have to use is MOQ, using MOQ. So in order to apply this, let me tell you what I'm planning for this. So let me save this one.
It's 7 o'clock.
I copy pasted your last class program. What is happening? I copy pasted your last class program, and what I did is I added one more repository here. Let me open and show you. I'm not going to TDD or muck directly. First, I'm going to show you one additional functionality called send email I added to existing functionality. 2-3 lines of the code I just added in that existing functionality called get the employee data or something, right? So let me close all the coding. I will go one by one for your better clarity. So we have something called repository. Coming to that repository which we already created last class, and coming to that interface which we already created. So I have one function called get all employee, and that employee detail I'm passing from here. And this one I added additional line number 28. I will come to this. Forget it now. So this is for simple simple unit testing. I had some hard-coded data, but I told you assume that you are collecting it from database. And in unit testing side, what you did? In unit testing side, last class what we did, I commented just now. This is the one which I did last class in order to check whether this asset is passing, this asset is failing, and so on and so forth. That we knew. Now same method also I copy pasted, and 2 more lines I added here that I will tell you. So first I will comment all these things, not to worry about mock testing first. First to be sure that you know unit testing. This is my unit testing functionality, okay, and it is going to call employee detail controller things, and then everything as we did last time, same thing it is doing here. That means I'm calling this controller itself. Then we will go to repository part. So this controller is having a function index, and I'm calling, and either it is failing or it is passing, totally up to our development. If something wrong is there, it will fail it. Everything correct, then it will pass it. So let's run it again. just to be in same line as the last class we did. Then 2 more line I will add into that to mock some partial code. That means I want to get the data should be passed and send the email should not be passed, should not be fail, it should be ignored. That is called mocking. Currently what I am running is not mocking. I have not gone to that function. Just see what it is doing. It is failing. Maybe some assertion is failing. Okay. Now, if you want to debug that assertion, what you have to do? You have to come here. This is your function. Then put a breakpoint and then debug it. So you can right click and debug here also, or you can click here and click on the debug also. Okay. Everything. You have here also test option. You can go to test menu option and you can debug also. So I want to see where it is really failing. Okay, this is what kind of we are repeating what we see last class. So come here. While creating the object itself, it is saying that no, you cannot go because in this get employee, you are having some send email, and what I have done is inside this send email, intentionally I have created some mistake. Okay, so if you go to implementation in this function, what I have done, I throw one timeout exception intentionally. Okay, assuming that maybe Google service is down, so this function is throwing one timeout exception. Now if I will comment this, then it will say I'm pass, but intentionally I wanted to fail that because of email, so that we can understand that it is not really developer's mistake if this is failing. If this is failing, then it is developer's mistake, right? So how to now mock this line? That means I want to say, if by the way this send email is coming in the way, then please mock it. Now you set your expectation what we are going to do through this mock testing. Now come to how part. Now any functionality you want to mock. So any functionality you want to mock. Mock testing. Any partial functionality to be ignored while unit testing the full functionality. And why that partial functionality to be ignored? Due to third-party dependency. Clear? So my full functionality is failing because my partial functionality Google email is failing. And I don't have any clue, right? I cannot, go to Google server and fix this issue. Then why my whole test plan will be failed? I don't want this failure. Then we'll go for mock testing. Before going to mock testing, first of all, you have to make sure that you are using dependency injection. Dependency injection means some constructor has to inject the dependency of that class. Here you are injecting from unit testing only. I will show you where we are injecting. This line number 46 and 47, we are going to inject the dependency, and we are receive the dependency here. Have a look. I have already abstraction in place. Abstraction is must to go for dependency injection. Dependency injection is must to go for mock testing. So wherever I think it is third-party functionality, I may or may not control this. I have to include one interface there. Minimum, you have to have one abstraction there. Whether you have any other way or not, any other benefit or not, but you just go for it, because in future you are planning to ignore this functionality out of TDD. That is ready. That means unless abstraction is there, you cannot go for dependency injection. Unless dependency injection is there, you cannot go for mock testing. So where is that dependency injection through constructor? Have a look. If you come here to this repository, check it out. Can you see line number 8 and line number 13? So in dependency injection, what you do to create the object of any class, don't instantiate the class name. I could have done here new mail repository, right? That will also work here to call this function. But what I did is I made dependency injection. I'm saying in runtime, it should decide which instance of the class will call the function. So one constructor and one null reference object. That I did. That means in the third party dependent class, I implemented one interface, and wherever I'm creating object of that third party dependent class, I plugged dependency injection. That means my infrastructure will now support mocking this line. If I will not have this constructor and directly I will say here new something, whatever the class name, then it will not support mock testing. That means I cannot ignore mocking of this function call unless I will use dependency injection. Now you decided, okay, chalo, I will use dependency injection because I want to ignore some partial part of this whole functionality during TDD. Now come to the unit testing part. So whichever function currently we are executing, instead of disturbing this one, I commented it because I want simple unit testing should be in a different functionality and mock testing should be in a different functionality. So I copy pasted that function one more time and only 2 lines I added at the top. Let me show you that. Now here I will not have this orange, rather I will have this orange. So instead of creating object straightway employee repository emp equal to new employee repository, what I did, I added these 2 lines here. Understand these 2 lines. So this is only mocking. Dependency injection activation is the infrastructure preparation to accept it. But how you are injecting the dependency and mocking a particular function, have a look. So I created one reference where I said because I have no idea which class type it will come in future. Okay. Then if this interface is saying so and so class type, then so and so class type will come and instantiate here. So I'm saying new mock within bracket. MOCK is the class name, but the library that you have to use is MOQ, line number 2. So you have to use the library using MOQ mock. Okay. Now come here. So if you have used that library, then MOCK is the class which is available in that assembly will be activated for you. So just create the object of that class, but as an interface, you have to pass this interface that this interface is implemented to that class whose mocking I want. Imagine there are 2 classes who is implementing this interface. That means you have 2 class function rights in order to mock, right? Currently we have 1 class only, mail repository. So there is a function inside my mail repository which I want to mock it. That's why I use that interface which is abstracted to that particular class. Second line, your mock object should identify through a function called setup that which function. Chances that this class might be having so many functions, right? Send email, save data, send this, send that, download it, upload it. Many functionality might be there. So which function you want to mock, that also you have to mention. So what I mentioned here in this bracket, have a look. Through lambda expression, you have to say anything, any lambda expression instance you have to give x such that x dot whatever the function name. Now this is to identify which function I want to mock, means which function I want to ignore while really going for asset. Some solution also should be there. Suppose I will not write this, it will mock it, no problem. But if the return type is Boolean, I have to tell if you are ignoring, then don't go to the definition of the function, return false or return true, something like that I have to write. So I said return true because my function is returning some Boolean value. Imagine here it is void, nothing to return, then here it will be nothing to do. That means this part you have to ignore. That means you are indirectly saying, while unit testing the complete workflow, if any function in between came whose name is send email, please ignore it. And instead of going to the definition, in that, please return true. That means without executing the coding of this function, it will simply say return true. Which line? This line. So line number 28, it saw that send email is there to call. Then it will understand that in dependency injection, it has been assigned that send email wherever comes, please ignore. Please ignore is not enough. Something have to return here. Then only it will understand that this line has successfully executed because its return type is Boolean. If return type is void, then this is fine. No need to return anything. If return type is Boolean, then you have to either say return true, return false. If it is maybe integer, either you have to say return 0. Something you have to do default. By default, what you want to return if it is really ignoring. So I said return true because I assume that if I don't want to go to that coding, simply here itself I will say return, then return true is good for me. Don't go to coding part, return true from here. Then as usual, my other functionality, whatever above this and whatever below this, that will be executed. So we can now put a breakpoint here in this function and we will see how it is behaving by debugging. So let's come here. I didn't do anything much. All this coding is same only this 2 line I added and I want to debug it now. So let's debug it. See what happens. First you run it, then we'll debug it. In fact, before running the unit test, always it is advisable to build the application once. Right click and build it so that DLL will be updated and unit test will not have any issue. So it is saying I'm good. That means mocking is happening properly and I'm good. Now what I will do that mistake once more. I forgot what is mock testing. Okay, I forgot what is mock testing. I don't know what is mock testing. I only know unit testing. Now see what happens. Again I will debug it. Build it before. So come here and debug it once more. So I follow this time only simple unit testing. I don't know what is mock testing. See what happens. It came here again. F10, F10, F11. I'm coming here. I'm coming here. I'm coming here. If I'll say F10, what will happen? Obviously, this will return. I assume that Google service is down. Google service is down means what? The request will put the Google service and it will be timeout because it's not up now. So timeout exception came and it is throwing here the exception and then it is coming and terminating the program for me. Now I will activate again that 2 lines of the code. So this way I don't want to create the object. I want to create the object this way. And before that I want to inject the dependency. This bracketed what I'm sending is whichever object you have created that I'm passing, and inside that one property is there called object which will have information about the mocking. So in mock class object there is a property called object object. In that all the mocking information will be kept that I'm passing there so that it will understand this function has to be mocked up send email. So now let's do it again, debug mode, see what happens. This time also it will go to that flow, but as per our understanding, it should return true in that particular line of code. So click here, go to F10. Where is that? Little hanged up. I'll stop and run it again. Okay. Now here I'm pressing F11, coming here. Now I resolved with the help of mock testing. So here when I was pressing F10, it was throwing exception. Now it will return true. Okay, it will not even go to that function definition. It will return true before going to that function itself, definition itself. It will say that it is not my area. It may be some third-party dependency. I will not go to that function because if success also I have no credit, if unsuccess also I have no mistake. So I will ignore it. So now as usual other things happened. At least your test case, assert, everything happened, and if assert is failing, that is a different story. Okay. So understand these two lines again. This is only extra code you have to write for marking up. Create the object of, here I said where, if you want you can say muck also, left side, MOCK, muck object name equal to new muck, within bracket you are passing that angle bracket, you are passing that interface, whom you want to muck. Now this interface says I have only one functionality, that is send email. Who knows, you might be having 3-4 functionality. Out of 3-4 functionality, suppose 2 functionality you want to muck it, then like this 2 lines you have to write. Whichever function you have to muck, that you have to write line by line. So each function should be defined under setup one time, whichever you want to muck it. And this return true or return false or return 0, return 1, these are all optional. Only if you have some return type in that mucking function, then you have to write it, otherwise you have to ignore it. And whatever object you created for muck, that object you have to pass it while creating the arrange object. So this is one additional thing you have to remember. And in target area, whatever you are going to muck, there it should implement some dependency injection. So if interface is not there, then mucking is not possible. As well as if interface along with the dependency injection is not there, mucking is not possible. So overall saying, there will no single workflow in your development where dependency injection should not be there. Every workflow, every controller, you should create the dependency injection of repository, right? So that in future also, if you decided to add a functionality and to muck it, your infrastructure should support it. So dependency injection is that important nowadays. Any question, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Any question?
Yeah, in those first 2 lines where you have dependency injection, just in case assume there is mocking but there is no dependency injection, what will happen?
It will run, but it will not return true here, whatever you expect. Because this object will be referenced null that time. So
Okay. So that the interface of mail repository that we have put right next to mock is creating a new instance of that class's object.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. You are injecting from here instead of injecting from middleware.
Got it, sir. And in the second line, that dot setup is a function that is available from the mock class.
Mock
right?
class, yes.
And
it
send
takes
email
one
is
day
as
back.
usual coming from the class that we are trying to test.
Automatically it will come when you put a dot. Imagine
Right,
3-4
okay.
functions are there, all 4 functions will be visible here. Whichever you want to mark it, you can mark it.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other question?
Sir, I have
yeah.
As you mentioned, like a mock means hide, right? So in this case, because of the third party is not working properly, that's why we put that function, right?
Correct.
So what if that third party function is working properly?
Then also it will work. I mean, then also it will not count that timing. It will not go to that definition at all. Because as I said, if that is successfully happening, you don't have any credit. If it is failing also, you don't have any mistake, right? So you have to ignore it in the unit test.
So it goes for that function, right? Send email. It sends
No. It will never go. It will never go. Because that is not our testing area at all. Mock testing means that functionality we don't want to test at all. Meaning is that. So it will return true again. Whether working, not working, it will return true in that line. Okay.
Okay. So
it will not at all go to the definition.
I can add this functionality in between the project as well, right? Whenever I realize like the third party is not working properly, so let's put this functionality. So no any kind of exceptions coming, right?
Correct. Because why? Because of other third party mistake, you will fail your whole test case. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
So it will not go. If successfully happening also it will not go, and server is down also it will not go. Meaning is that. Okay. So it will simply say return true in this line. It will not at all go to the definition of that function also. Because while injecting the dependency, you have to pass the information ki wherever this function call will come, please ignore it. That is what you have done here, right? Wherever that function call will come, return true and ignore it. Mock it.
Yeah,
means
and when
it.
the issue is going to be resolved, like a third party issue is going to be resolved, then in that case, I can comment this code, right, again?
Not necessary. It will not go. Success or failure, it will not go to that function at all. So you need not to comment it also.
No, once the send email issue resolved from the third party.
Why you should be bothered about resolved or not resolved during testing? Chances there we have not taken license also, na? Testing means what? Before deployment we are testing it, right?
Yeah.
So when you will deploy it in live server, then only your license may start. Before 6 months, why you will take the license because of testing? Got it? So you may ignore that simply. It is not matter of working or not working. Chances there you don't want to test also that part because you have not taken license also so far. Right? After 3 months, suppose you are going to deploy the application. Today will not take the live server license, right? For the sending email. So you are just ignoring it. Ignore that part. Something like that. You are saying doing by marking. Is that clear?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to give you some work in project, but little time. Okay, let me check what we have done so far. In 4 or 5 minutes, if I can give some work to you. This is the updated Excel. The last class feedback category level. These are all master data, in fact. But actual module was scheduling the feedback. After this scheduling the feedback, anything we covered, guys, discussed?
No, sir.
This is the latest one. Okay, so this is the latest one.
No, about external user trying to.
External user.
That is the
That
fourth
means-
module that you discussed.
Yeah. This is not the
Wanted
latest
us
one.
to
That
work
means-
on that. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, got it. So, did I draw in some Excel sheet or?
You created a module for
EMP file is there.
In one EMP file. Correct. So, you guys have started working on this module? External
Yes,
user. Okay.
Right.
So major part is pending still in this project. That is giving the feedback. So your schedule is ready. The person who is going to give feedback, he also got the information that okay, so and so person I have to give the feedback. Now matter is really providing the feedback. Two screen we have to do. One is for external user and one is for internal user. External user will be little different because a lot of things he will not get access to our application, but internal user feedback form will be different. Feedback form, when we say we will plan in such a way that whenever user logs in, okay, which user? Now provider actually. There are two categories of user here. One is to whom feedback will be given, one is by whom, right? So when by whom will log on, first of all, it will check whether any schedule is present or not. Login part, at least I will give you the work today. How to give feedback, forget it. Later on I will explain. But when any user is logging in, okay, in the login screen itself, one extra coding you add, all of you. Currently what we have done, if user is admin, return and redirect to registration screen. If user is so and so, redirect to this screen. Like that we have done some part, right? So there only add one more else if statement. If the user's role is, what role we have taken? Feedback, something senior, junior, etc. Something we have taken, right? Feedback giver. So if that is a feedback giver, then check if any scheduling is there against him, then redirect to some blank page. The blank page later on I will explain how to make the feedback giving page. Again repeating, in login screen flow, after clicking on login button, you have one if else statement where role wise you are redirecting to different screen. One more else if statement you put where it will check if the role is out of this senior, junior or peer and that user ID is already having some schedule in the schedule table. As a feedback giver, he is already in the schedule table because current logged in user already just go to that table and check whether at least one record is there against him. Where is that? This table. Feedback schedule.
Feedback mapping.
Yeah, somewhere feedback mapping table will be there. So in that you have to check whether at least one record is available against that user. If yes, then redirect to one blank screen. That's it to do as of now. In that blank screen, how to design, what matter, how to give feedback, that I will explain you next class.